Do you know your purpose and how purpose shifts with the stages of your life? That's what we're going to talk about with my guest, Holly Woods. Holly Woods, PhD, is a purpose activator. She's a best-selling author, scientist, master coach and mentor, speaker, consultant, and visionary who sees deeply into your soul. Holly's best-selling book, The Golden Thread, Where to Find Purpose in the Stages of Your Life, shows how to find the clues about purpose throughout your life so your greatest contribution can emerge. Welcome, Holly. I'm so glad that you're here today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so enthralled with the concept of the golden thread and where that came from. So talk to us a little bit about the golden thread.
Well, the golden thread is the through line in our lives, literally, that shows up in childhood and is expressed over time uniquely across the stages, depending on what it is that we need to accomplish as humans, sort of the developmental tasks. So when I'm working with a client, I would begin by having them tell their story and show us, tell me, well, what is it you were most passionate about and interested in and curious, and what intrigued you and what were you almost obsessed with as a child, that then flows through your life in ways that are related to the significant steps that need to happen at each stage of life. So that's the thread
that flows through. So being bossy when I was a kid is probably part of the thread that's still flowing through, right?
Well, it's possible. It might also be the shadow, but there's something about you being a leader that was probably, relevant in childhood.
Yep, you got me. That was it. But my family called it being bossy, which was probably part
of it. Of course. And I was called stubborn, which, I didn't know, because the word stubborn hung with me for so long, and I had this deep shame about it. I didn't know that actually was a visionary part of me that saw things and knew they needed to happen, that I needed to figure out, how to get there. And I was pretty stubborn in my approach. Like, no, actually, that's real. I see it. But I was stubborn as a child. So
it's interesting, the labels that we grow up with and then how they squash, right, our purpose if we don't understand that we're not subject to the limitations of other people's perceptions, right? And I'm sure that's a big part of the work that you do. And I'm very curious about how you discovered this notion of a golden thread. How did that open up for you personally?
Well, given that this work is my purpose, I really was designed to come back and have this life and uncover this thing. So, I don't know that it's necessarily would have been evident to others. But I heard voices as a child that said, you're here to do important things. And I'm like, well, what is it? And why won't you just tell me? Like, if I'm here, why can't you just send me a missive that says this is it? And I also was placed in a context that was pretty challenging as a kid. I had a lot of trauma and abuse. And so I had a lot to overcome in order to find that thing. And there were, literally decades of my life that I didn't want to be here on the planet. It was so hard. But I kept hearing this voice, no, actually, you're here to do something important. So I just knew I had to stay and figure that out. So I went on this very circuitous journey trying to figure out, why am I here? What am I here to do? And how am I supposed to figure that out? So in that process, I studied and learned and just obsessively went at, how do you figure out what you're here to do? And so in the process of my own healing and my own developmental journey, I uncovered this thread that had kind of always been a part of my life. I got, it was not only my life, but my children's lives. I raised 4 kids, to my own 2 stepkids, and I got to witness their journeys, like my own little clinical trial. And then in my clients' lives, I began to see, it was after all of that together, like, oh, there's this thread that runs through us. And, just sort of emerged literally one day, like, oh, I see it now, like this is it. And I begin to piece it together. And I was kind of in my exploratory lab trying to figure out, well, how do I find that in early stages? And over time, it's been a lifetime of figuring this out.
I love what you're sharing for a couple of things that are coming forward to me. One is that small voice in the back of your mind was quite active.
Yeah, very.
Helping you stay here.
Yep. I had to stay. I was depressed and suicidal on and off for 30 years. And that's not something that everybody needs to experience to live on purpose, but it was my journey, which also meant I had to dig deep, deep, deep to do the shadow work, to liberate all the stuff that, needed to be resolved in order to be a healthy, functioning human.
Yes. Yes. And in that journey, no doubt, you discovered elements of who you are and the obstacles to getting to our purpose,
Yep.
right, along the way that you use in your service now.
Right. Which means I developed lots of capacity to help others do that in a loving and compassionate way, because we all have obstacles and barriers and hurdles and shadow, like every single one of us. And the goal is not to diminish our value or our worth because of those things, but to see them as actually natural, facets of us that are they're catalysts for becoming more of who we are. As we uncover and resolve those things, it illuminates the gift of who we are. So I often say there's a flip side to purpose. One side is the gift or the contribution, the sort of the light expression, and the other side is the shadow or the wounding that has to be resolved in order to have the light, the gift illuminated. So we have to do both. It's not like you can go find the gift and not do the shadow work. Like, nope. Sorry, it doesn't work that way.
It isn't going to work that way, no.
It doesn't.
And I'm also struck by the fact that you were persistent with a question that, what is my purpose? You stayed with it until your purpose revealed itself.
Well, again, I didn't have a choice, because this was my purpose, to do what I do and, to speak powerful truths, to shine love onto shadow, to liberate soul's potential and reunite love and power. So because that was my purpose and I was, attuned to the instructions, it's the journey I've been on in order to be able to help others on that journey. So, and as we evolve, it becomes louder and louder for each of us, because we reach a stage of consciousness where we see that I am a unique being with particular facets and gifts to present to the world, to contribute and make a difference. And that becomes such a loud longing, or a strong longing, a loud voice, that we can't ignore it. And that happens at a particular stage in consciousness when we become cognizant of those things.
Yeah, so true. Why do you think it's so important for people to really connect and uncover their purpose now, Holly?
Well, there are probably many reasons, but the two most salient for me are that, we really are on this journey on the planet in order to liberate our souls. That's my belief about why we come back. And so that is our primary assignment, to become ourselves. I often talk about purpose as being more of who you are and less of who you are not. And so if your primary reason for being here is to become more of you, then this is the simplest way to do that is, what is it? What is wanting to be birthed in you? And the second reason is that, I often call it, we're a thread in a tapestry. I use that metaphor, that if each of us were really present in our fullest potential as our golden thread in this large tapestry, the tapestry would be woven tightly and have integrity. And right now we have a pretty frayed tapestry because so few of us are actually really living our purpose. And so the planet is, the conditions on the planet are really very expressive of that lack of presence to ourselves or living purpose. And it's a pretty urgent time on the planet for us to be more responsive and responsible to being who we are. And so I believe, that I think we would have reached the tipping point had things not gone cataclysmic in the last year or so. We were reaching a tipping point before the pandemic, and while we've evolved, the conditions on the planet have worsened, continued to worsen. So we are no longer at that tipping point, and so more of us actually really do need to be living on purpose in order to more greatly affect the planet. I do think we can turn this around. I have no doubt. I mean, I have conversations all the time with, many visionaries who we're on our way, but we all need to get on the train. So that's fundamentally to be ourselves, to serve the world is kind of my message.
Yeah, and I love the metaphor of the tapestry, because I can really connect with that, right? But when threads are missing, or they're not, if you've ever woven or looked at a piece of weaving, right?
Right.
If it's frayed, if it's weak in places, it doesn't hold up well.
Yeah, it just fundamentally doesn't have integrity, and we as humanity do not have integrity at this point. We are not fully ourselves as a species as we could be here on the planet with all these other species that, we've.
Yeah. When you look at the vision of your vision of humanity, majority of us at least living on purpose, what do you see that's different? How does that shape our reality?
I have a very visceral experience when I imagine more of us living on purpose. And of course, I want to cry when I think about the beauty that would emerge from that. It would be so different. We would be internally aligned. We would be living with more grace. We each would have so much more joy and delight and wonder at being a human on this bounteous, abundant, delicious planet we live on. We would be in touch with and attuned to nature. And at the moment I'm speaking individually because that's where it starts. We each would be so aligned with our place and our role as humans, expressing ourselves more fully, making a contribution, and it being received, this reciprocal relationship between each other and with the planet itself. And in that, there's so much harmony that, of course, we would naturally be more harmonious with each other and with, our many cultures. So it would be a more peaceful place, and we would be working together collaboratively, co-creatively to create solutions to these, large multi-systemic problems. I think we can do it, and I am hopeful. I actually am very optimistic that we're going there. I think the pandemic has been a serious catalyst for many of us, and many of us are more committed than ever to being in this shift. We aren't causing the shift; we're just responding to it, but it is occurring. And yep, I'm here. I'm serving in my role.
Yeah, it's a beautiful vision. And I've often said that with my clients, my students, that for every problem that we have, there is already a solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's inside of us.
It is.
And purpose is such a powerful way to activate those solutions for humanity. They're already here.
Well, and I think this is the sacred feminine, right? When I'm aligned in myself, it is really a yin expression of self, because I am receiving that which wants to come through me to then be expressed, which is more yang. And it's that constant movement of receiving the sacredness of my unique, nuanced, one of a kind, 1 in 400 quadrillion version of humanity, and allowing that to be expressed in the world in my next best expression. that will resolve these dilemmas. Is how is it I am intending to show up, given who I have, who I am and who I am becoming in the moment, in each moment. So presence and groundedness are such fundamental facets of living on purpose, and then embodying and executing, so it's both.
It's both energies, both yin and yang working together. And I'm
Yep.
so glad you spoke to that yin essence that is present to who you really are authentically.
Yeah.
What you were created for, in a sense, isn't just an action that you will do. It is that,
Mm-hmm.
but it is also the very essence that you bring walking on this blessed Mother Earth.
Yeah. And we've been living in such a masculine expression. This isn't a new statement, but we've been living very misaligned as a species on this planet, not listening to the messages that she is attempting to give us, or that is coming through as spiritual beings, and really getting quiet enough, creating enough space internally to hear what it is that is wanting to flow through me. That is really truly living on purpose. And then being aligned with and taking bold, courageous steps forward. It's both and but it has to start from the innate essence of who I am, wanting to be expressed without effort and without all the wounding and all of that stuff that gets mixed up in most of our efforting and executing on the planet.
Yeah, and I love how you're speaking to that, to your essence, because that, as I know from other conversations we've had, that is your purpose. It is your fundamental essence, knowing that it's time to now express. Yeah. Talk about how that awareness of purpose and living that purpose shifts over time.
Sure. And so part of this conception of the golden thread, and why I call it the golden thread as it runs through your life, is that as humans on the planet, we are attempting to accomplish developmental tasks over time. My study of human development helped me understand that at each stage of life, we are attempting to do particular things to become more developed, more functional humans. So what you do in early childhood is very different than what you need to do in adolescence, and and so on. And so our expression of purpose will look different across the stages of life. And so part of the challenge in uncovering our purpose and who we really are is that it looks different. So what you necessarily were curious about as a child is not going to be the same expression in adolescence or adulthood. There will be facets of it that do run this through line, but it's not, if you were interested in horses as a child, doesn't mean you're going to become a cowboy or a horseman or, whatever. There might be that you're very interested in the sensuality of, or the communication of, other beings, of other animals, and there may be some other expression. I'm using that as an example, we have many expressions of purpose over time. So what I do is help people see how the thread has run through their life, which helps us pull out the facets of their purpose. And then we make sense of all that, synthesize it, and then sort of out pops. Literally, it's like magic. I can't, when that pop happens, it's like, I don't know what just happened. That wasn't me. I wish I could claim that, but it wasn't mine. It's, the sacred movement, sacred flow. And when that happens, the next expression literally just like plops in your lap. Like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do next. Looky here. So, I'm not a magician, but magic does happen. And I'm an alchemist, I guess you could say. And so there is always another expression. I do work. Many of my clients are people who've done a lot of personal spiritual development work, so they're fairly evolved and conscious, and often successful in one career or another, but it wasn't meaningful, and they've gotten bored. And why that used to work and it no longer does is like, no matter where you are in life, if you're evolving, you're doing your work, there's always another expression that wants to emerge. And we need to welcome that and embrace it. It's a positive thing. Like, okay, yeah, I know you've been going along just fine in this particular business or this career, and it no longer speaks to you. Great, let's find the next thing, because there's something else that wants to be expressed, and that's your next gift to the planet. To you and the planet, because it always serves us first.
Yeah, and I love the way that you're expressing this, because you're right. As a child, we don't have the concepts of how we might act and influence as adults. We have the standard careers that we're taught when we're little, but the concept of awakening consciousness, or speaking truth to power, or all these other kinds of expressions of ourselves, right? That are more deep, more connected to purpose. It doesn't form in a little mind.
Right. Yeah. And so as an example, because you brought up speaking truth to power, and one of the facets of my purpose is speaking powerful truth, which I think is true for many visionaries. But as a child, I had to stand up to an abusive mother. As an adolescent, I often questioned the people in power who spoke dogma, and I wanted to understand, well, so tell me more. Why is that true? And I was always in the front of the classroom in school. And at some point I became a scientist and studied truth and wanted to understand, even though academia really isn't about truth necessarily. I mean, I'm totally still a scientist and I believe in science, but the system itself has got some flaws. And then I became a mediator and helped other people speak their truth. And then I became a coach and unearthed truths for people to evolve and develop. And now I actually help people unearth the truth of who they are, and so their souls can be expressed. So that's just my facet of that particular facet of my purpose being expressed uniquely over time. And I have actually new expressions, in the works evolving, which will just be another expression of that facet.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that, because it really helps paint the picture of purpose evolving over time, making itself known in new forms of expression, but the purpose remaining very much steadfast at the center.
Yeah, I want to be really clear about that. I believe my conception is that purpose itself remains constant, and that its expression shifts over time. So the fundamental essence of who we are, our essential beingness, is cornerstone foundation for our experience in a lifetime, but we have many expressions.
Beautiful. Could not have said that better, Holly. It just is so resonating with my whole being. Thank you for that. Thank you for the work that you're doing, this beautiful sharing. Just awesome. And you have a gift. We'll make sure there's a link below. Do you want to tell them about the gift?
Absolutely. So I do have a gift. Because I work with people in fairly intense ways, what I did is put together an audio course that is 3 segments, and it walks you through the initial steps to begin to look for your golden thread in your life. And just like I'm so excited for people to download that and use it and begin to dissect your own golden thread. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Oh, thank you for sharing it. And thank you. Thank you for being here today. I so appreciate you and your work in the world.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
And everyone, you can find out more about Holly Woods and her gift at the link below and discover more of your purpose in this world. And as always, subscribe to my channel and join us in this community. And to receive my free meditation gift, The Holding, check out the link below. Thanks for all you are doing to awaken feminine consciousness, and I'll see you at my next interview soon.